Amerika Birleşik Devletleri Hazine Sekreteri Bessent Tarife Üzerine 30 Nisan 2025. Basın Sekreteri Karoline Leavitt ve Scott Bessent tarifeleri ve ticaret anlaşmalarını tartışıyor.
Thanks so much for being here. I have a question for Secretary Bessent. On tariffs, the President said over the weekend that we are hoping that maybe tariff revenues could replace income tax. But we also keep hearing about the deals that the administration is pursuing. So my question is, what is the White House's ultimate objective here? Do you want to have long-term tariff revenue or deals that might reduce those tariffs?
I think it's a combination of both. So we're going to take in long-term tariff revenue. We put a process in place. We have 18 important trading relationships. We will be speaking to all of those partners, or at least 17 of them, over the next few weeks. Many of them have already come to Washington. What President Trump is referring to is the ability for tariff revenue to give income tax relief. And I think there's a very good chance that we will see this in the upcoming tax bill. The president campaigned on no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, and the restoring interest deductibility for autos, for American-made autos. So tariff income could be used for tax relief on all those immediately.
So you think that there is a role for significant tariff revenue in U.S. fiscal policy?
I think that it is something that got put away a long time ago, and I think that tariffs will bring back American manufacturing and generate substantial revenues.
On manufacturing, we've seen some pretty grisly surveys this month from the Philly Fed, which saw the biggest drop since May of 2020, and the Dallas Fed, similar plunging outlook, poor shipping orders. What are American manufacturers not understanding about your push for onshoring in the U.S.?
Well, I think I was in the investment business 35 years, and I learned to ignore the survey data and look at the actual data, and the actual data has been quite good. The job data is good. Americans keep spending, and as Caroline said, we have these incredible commitments to bring manufacturing back on shore with record investment by domestic corporations and foreigners who want to come into the U.S.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The Chinese continue to say that the U.S. and China are not engaged in any consultation or negotiation on tariffs. You recently said you've talked to your counterpart, but more about, quote, traditional things like financial stability. So can you clarify, is the administration talking to Beijing specifically about tariffs or not?
Well, we're not going to talk about who's talking to whom, but I think that over time we will see that the Chinese tariffs are unsustainable for China. I've seen some very large numbers over the past few days that show if these numbers stay on, Chinese could lose 10 million jobs very quickly, and even if there is a drop in the tariffs, that they could lose 5 million jobs. So remember that we are the deficit country. They sell almost 5 times more goods to us than we sell to them. So the onus will be on them to take off these tariffs. They're unsustainable for them.
And they are saying you guys are not talking about it. So is that true?
Look, they have a different form of government. They're playing to a different audience. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty, again, of who's talking to whom. But as I said, I believe for the Chinese, these tariffs are unsustainable.
And very quickly, 2 days ago, you said you didn't know if President Trump had spoken to Xi Jinping. Do you know now?
Again, I would say Caroline and I have a lot of jobs around the White House. Running the switchboard isn't one of them.
Bloomberg, go ahead. Secretary Bessent, thank you so much for being here this morning. You've talked about the importance of giving investors certainty when it comes to the market, yet the Trump administration is continuing to negotiate several complex trade deals in a very sort of compressed time frame. When do you expect you'll be able to give the market some certainty around those deals? Do you have a deadline? Is it the 90-day pause? What are we looking at here?
Good question. And I think one thing that has been a little disconcerting for the markets is, President Trump creates what I would call strategic uncertainty in the negotiations. So he is more concerned about getting the best possible trade deals for the American people. We had 4 years of bad deals for decades of unfair trading, and we are going to unwind those and make them fair. What we are doing is we've created a process. I think the aperture of uncertainty will be narrowing, and as we start moving forward announcing deals, then there will be certainty. But certainty is not necessarily a good thing in negotiating.
Mr. Secretary, last night there were reports on the administration sort of walking back a little bit on the auto tariffs. Can you sort of just elaborate on that decision there and what we can expect going forward, and why sort of the shift in those auto tariffs?
Well, President Trump has had meetings with both domestic and foreign auto producers, and he's committed to bringing back auto production to the U.S. So we want to give the automakers a path to do that quickly, efficiently, and create as many jobs as possible.
Jasmine. Thank you so much, Caroline. Thank you, Secretary. Back on China, does the administration anticipate supply chain shocks or supply shocks coming now that cargo shipments from China are significantly down? And if so, are there plans in the process of how to address that?
I wouldn't think that we would have supply chain shocks, and I think retailers have managed their inventory in front of this. I speak to dozens of companies, sometimes daily, but definitely weekly, and they know that President Trump is committed to fair trade and have planned accordingly.
And then second question, can you outline the timeline for when you think some of these deals, particularly with your Asian countries like India, Japan, South Korea, you may have an announcement?
I'm glad you brought up our Asian trading partners and allies. They have been the most forthcoming in terms of doing the deals. As I mentioned, Vice President Vance was in India last week. I think that he and Modi made some very good progress, so I could see some announcements on India. I could see the contours of a deal with the Republic of Korea coming together, and then we've had substantial talks with the Japanese.
Andrea?
Secretary Bessent, just continuing on the path of the sort of progress. You said yesterday, I think, that it was could happen as early as this week or possibly next week. Can you give us a bit of a timetable? And then I wanted to ask about South Korea specifically. They've said that they probably won't be able to make a comprehensive deal until early July because of their elections. Japan also has elections. And to what extent are domestic factors complicating your efforts? Canada just had an election. Are you seeing that you might have to think about delaying the 90 days?
Well, I would actually take the opposite tack, that I think from our talks that these governments actually want to have the framework of a trade deal done before they go into elections to show that they have successfully negotiated with the United States. So we are finding that they are actually much more keen to come to the table, get this done, and then go home and campaign on it.
Sean?
I'm sorry, did you have a comment on whether something could happen this week or next week? For a deal. So, you said yesterday.
Again, I think that we are very close on India. And in India, just a little inside baseball, India, in a funny way, is easier to negotiate with than many other countries because they have very high tariffs and lots of tariffs. So it's much easier to confront the direct tariffs when as we go through these unfair trade deals that have been put in over decades, that the non-tariff trade barriers can be much more insidious and also harder to detect. So a country like India, which has the posted and ready tariffs, it's much easier to negotiate with them. So I think the India negotiations are moving well.
Sean, go
Hi,
ahead.
Mr. Secretary. So it was reported this morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect, crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China, who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
Is Jeff Bezos still a Trump supporter?
Look, I will not speak to the president's relationships with Jeff Bezos, but I will tell you that this is certainly a hostile and political action by Amazon. And Secretary, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I would also add that the bringing down the terrible Biden inflation has been a priority for the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and President Trump has done a great job of leading that since January 20th. Interest rates, mortgage rates are down, gasoline and energy prices are down. We're expecting the further decreases, and as Caroline said, the big tax on consumers that goes unnoticed is deregulation or regulation, and we are deregulating and bringing that down. So, from a household income point of view, we would expect real purchasing increases. We've seen them over the first 100 days, and we would expect that to accelerate. We are doing peace deals, trade deals, tax deals, and deregulating. And the deregulation is a longer lead time, but I think by the third and fourth quarters, that's really going to kick in.
Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. A question for you and Secretary Bessent. We talk a lot about volatility and uncertainty in the marketplace, and the president has stated all along that he's more concerned about mainstream America, the American worker. You just talked about deregulation and this entire fair trade and reciprocals. What is your message to the American people in terms of letting them get through this disturbance and the outcome being greater and a greater good for the American worker, the American people, the American families?
I would say trust in President Trump. There's a reason he was reelected to this office. It's because of the historic success of his economic formula in the first term, and as I laid out at the beginning of the briefing and the Secretary has talked about and the President talks about every day, there's a proven formula that works. Massive deregulation, energy independence, and tax cuts, which are coming. And the Secretary is working very hard on that with our counterparts on Capitol Hill. If you want to talk about that, that's a huge deal to put more money back into the pockets of hardworking Americans. As for the fair trade deals the president is trying to negotiate, he's not just righting the wrong of the mess that he inherited from the past 4 years of the Biden administration. This is a mess that has been created for the past 4 decades that has sold out the middle class, that has moved jobs overseas. You think about our heartland, middle America, what towns used to look like, what they look like today. President Trump wants to restore the golden age, and it's a process to do that, and that process is underway, but he's put together a fantastic trade team. Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick, Jamieson Greer, all working incredibly hard on this effort 24/7, but tax cuts are coming, and that's key. And Mr. Secretary, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's really a three-legged stool in the economic policy. It's trade, it's tax, and it's deregulation. So we are in the midst of addressing, as Caroline said, these long-term trade imbalances. The tax bill is going much better than I would have thought when I took office on January 28th, and that's through President Trump's leadership. That Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune are united. Speaker Johnson, we had a very good meeting yesterday with somebody called the Big Six, NEC Director Kevin Hassett, myself, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, Committee Chairman Jason Smith, and Senator Crapo. And the tax bill is moving forward. It is going to give permanence to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, which will, back to the question on certainty, it will give American business certainty, it will give American people certainty, and then President Trump is also adding the things for working Americans that is talked about earlier: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making auto payments deductible. So that will substantially address the affordability crisis. And the other thing that I would note, and back to data, is that the Vanguard, one of the largest money management firms in America, said that over the past 100 days, 97% of Americans haven't done a trade, and in fact, individual investors have held tight